It is behind closed doors, and I've no intention. I've started to stop now. I'm determined to put an end to this terrible.
Camilla entered Clarence's house believing that in just a few minutes, the final door to Windsor would officially open for her. But on the long table there was no key, no letter of approval, and no congratulatory message for a queen. There was only an old sealed dossier dating back to the time of Prince Philip. As she began to read, Camilla maintained her composure. She assumed this was merely another bit of red tape regarding the allocation of apartments. But then the words stood out like a verdict standardized years ago. She could still enter Windsor for ceremonial occasions. She could still appear alongside the king. She could still stay there when duty required it. But she would never be permitted to regard Windsor as her permanent residence. No private apartment, no dedicated staff, no right to allocate additional rooms, no control over the spaces behind those imposing doors. And Windsor was not the only one. Buckingham Palace, Balmoral, Sandringham, all were placed beyond her control. Camilla asked to read the document again. This time she went more slowly, not out of anger, but because she was still trying to believe this was all a mistake. Yet Charles sat nearby saying not a word. It was that very silence that made Camilla realize the document was genuine. She turned to her husband. When did Philip prepare this? Charles did not answer. Just then, the secretary paused. The sequence numbers in the file did not match up. A second sealed page was missing. Camilla immediately demanded that it be produced. But before anyone could react, the door at the far end of the room opened. Princess Anne entered not through the doorway, carrying a black storage box. In that moment, Camilla realized she was facing more than just a stern directive. She was confronting a plan Prince Philip had devised to maintain control over the future of the royal family, even after his passing. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future royal secrets. I'd also love to know where you're tuning in from. Please leave your city or country in the comments below so we can connect. Princess Anne offered no greeting. She walked straight to the long table, placed a black storage box in front of Camilla, and kept one hand on the lid as if shielding its contents from any interference. Camilla looked at the box, then at Anne. The bewilderment in her eyes began to give way to defiance. No private document can supersede the authority of the reigning monarch, Camilla said. Charles could amend it or annul it. Anne did not argue. She simply pulled the box closer and replied in a voice chillingly calm. "My father knew you would say that." An immediate silence fell over the room. Anne explained that the decree was neither a family letter nor a set of instructions that could be disregarded out of sentiment. Philip had tied it to estate management agreements, pledges to safeguard the line of succession, and a multi-party approval process. In other words, Charles could not unilaterally tear it up without dismantling the entire system established before Philip's death. Anne unlocked the box. Inside lay pages of documents bound with black cord, each bearing a seal of authentication. She withdrew the first page and declared herself the primary guardian of the decree. Her duty was not to preserve Philip's memory. Her duty was to prevent the document from being undermined by sentiment, family pressure, backroom deals, or the unilateral authority of any individual, even the monarch. Camilla turned to Charles. He remained silent. That silence no longer seemed like hesitation. It looked like an acknowledgement that Anne was telling the truth. Then Anne opened another attachment. Directly beneath her name was a second signature. Prince William. Camilla looked up. William had been present at the far end of the room all along, yet until now he had remained motionless, neither intervening nor offering an explanation. Anne made it clear that no right of permanent residence at Windsor, Buckingham Palace, Balmoral, or Sandringham could be granted to Camilla without William's signature. Camilla looked him straight in the eye. "Do you truly intend to turn your father's wife into a mere guest?" William did not lose his temper. He stepped closer to the table and replied slowly, "This decree does not dictate who is loved. It dictates who controls the places tied to the line of succession. That calm response drained the force from Camilla's accusation. Anne continued reading from the second page. Camilla was not permitted to approve renovations herself. She could not appoint permanent staff. She could not be allocated an apartment. She could not integrate her own private entourage into the permanent royal household. Any exceptions required written consent. Then Anne paused at the final clause. If Camilla pressured Charles to intervene, the existing restrictions would automatically be tightened. Camilla said nothing. She bent over the appendices, flipping through the pages as if searching for a loophole. But instead of finding a way out, she saw one name appearing time and again. Catherine. In that moment, Camilla understood. The decree had not been written merely to prevent her from encroaching too deeply upon royal power. It had been written to protect another woman before she ever had the chance to stand in her way. The name Catherine came up so frequently that Camilla could no longer dismiss it as mere coincidence. Every clause regarding residency rights, every restriction on room allocation, and every rule concerning staff seemed to point toward the same goal, ensuring that William's family would never have to depend on her approval. But to understand why Prince Philip established such a rigorous framework, one must look back years to a time before Charles had ascended the throne, when the boundaries between the two future reigns were still undefined. That evening, following a lengthy meeting at Windsor regarding the succession, key family members and royal advisors gathered for a private dinner. The earlier meeting had focused on matters that seemed purely administrative: which duties would be transferred, which offices would belong to the heir's household, which staff members would remain in service, and which apartments should be reserved for the transition period. Among the proposals was a plan to set aside a large apartment at Windsor for William, Catherine, and their children. Camilla objected. She did not dispute William's position, nor did she claim his family had no right to a presence at Windsor. Her argument was simpler and in its own way entirely logical. Charles had spent most of his life living under decisions made by the previous generation. Camilla believed that once he became king, he should be free to organize his household staff and living spaces to suit the needs of the new reign. Reserving a large apartment before Charles had even ascended the throne amounted in her view to imposing constraints before he had the authority to make his own decisions. Camilla described it as a form of premature territorial staking. An immediate silence fell over the room. Prince Philip set his glass down on the table. He looked at Camilla and asked if she truly viewed the heir's family as mere guests in the very place where they were expected to one day shoulder the burden of responsibility. Camilla remained composed. She replied that no one denied William's future. Yet Charles's reign could not begin with every key room already claimed by the anxieties of those who came before. Catherine said nothing. She simply pushed her chair slightly back from the table. William glanced at his wife for a brief moment, then lowered his head. He did not want to turn the dinner into a confrontation between his father's autonomy and his own family's security. Philip observed it all. He realized the debate was no longer about an apartment. It had become a far greater question: could the standing of the heir and his family be altered by the wishes of the monarch's spouse? After dinner, Philip called Charles into a private room. He asked bluntly, "If the interests of William and his family clash with Camilla's demands, whom will you protect?" Charles fell silent for a moment, then replied that upon becoming king, he could not allow old disputes to continue dictating his marriage. But Philip heard a different subtext in that answer. He worried that Charles might prioritize protecting Camilla over the long-standing principles of succession. That very night, Philip summoned a trusted secretary. Initially, he asked only for a provision to secure the apartment for William at Windsor. But before sunrise, the scope of the document had shifted. Windsor was no longer the only location. Buckingham Palace, Balmoral, Sandringham. Philip had expanded the decree to cover all the residences that would shape the power of the next reign. Philip extended the decree beyond Windsor, yet he understood that a mere list of prohibitions would not suffice for the long term. A future monarch might alter the procedure, A family crisis could create an exception. A private plea might cause seemingly immovable principles to become negotiable. Thus, in the months that followed, Philip did more than simply draft additional clauses. He studied how power truly operated behind the royal walls. He examined every apartment, every office, every line of personnel, and every protocol for entry and exit. He realized that power within the palace rarely manifested as a public command. Instead, it was often shaped by far smaller decisions. Who was allocated the apartment closest to the monarch? Who had the right to enter without announcement? Whose staff occupied key positions? Which schedules took precedence? Which meetings were arranged postponed or quietly scrapped? Philip concluded that the person who controlled a royal residence controlled more than just the rooms. They could shape the entire domestic and political environment surrounding the monarchy. Consequently, he established a system of oversight robust enough to endure even after his own death. The first person chosen for this role was Princess Anne. Philip did not select Anne because she stood to benefit from the decree. Rather, it was the very fact that she did not that made her suitable. Anne was not part of the heir's immediate family. She had no need for protected apartments for herself. She could stand between Charles and William without being perceived as vying for advantage. More importantly, Philip believed Anne could withstand pressures that others would shy away from. She could face Charles's disappointment. She could rebuff private pleas, and she could hold fast to a principle even if enforcing it caused pain to the entire family. But Anne could not be the only one. Philip named William immediately after her. William was granted the right of consent because he was the one who would have to live longest with the consequences of every decision made during his father's reign. If Catherine's residency rights could be altered without William's signature, his family's future could still be used as a bargaining chip whenever palace tensions rose. Thus, Philip stipulated that Catherine would never be dependent on the monarch's spouse for the right to live in the very places where she might one day serve alongside the king. A contingency succession plan was drawn up. As William assumed greater constitutional duties, Catherine and their children would automatically be granted priority residency rights at Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace. That protection encompassed more than just an apartment. It included family living quarters, access to staff areas for official duties, and the ability to operate without seeking specific permission from the head of the previous monarch's household. After dinner at Windsor, Philip met privately with Catherine. He did not reveal the full structure of the decree to her, nor did he specify the extent to which Camilla would be restricted. He simply made a promise. Catherine, William, and their children would never have to feel like guests, in the very places they were expected to one day serve and inherit. Catherine knew a safeguard had been put in place, but she did not know that in opening those doors for her, Philip had simultaneously locked them against someone else. Back in the present, Camilla continued to turn the pages of the appendix. Catherine's name appeared in the clauses regarding apartment staff priority rights and the succession schedule. At that moment, the truth became undeniable. Philip did not merely erect a barrier to prevent Camilla from gaining further access to royal power. He also paved the way for Catherine to step into the future without ever needing her permission. The pages of the appendix lay open before Camilla as the private meeting at Windsor began. There were no advisors in the room, no secretaries, and no prepared statements. There was only Camilla, Princess Anne, Prince William, a long table, 4 chairs, and the dossier of Philip's decrees resting between them like an unresolved verdict. Camilla was the first to break the silence. She pushed the folder away so forcefully that the pages shifted out of alignment. "You are using the will of a dead man to humiliate the reigning queen consort." Her voice was not loud, yet every word was charged with long-suppressed indignation. Camilla spoke of the decades she had spent enduring judgment, mockery, and rejection just to stand by Charles's side. She had weathered public hostility, icy stares from within the family, and the constant pressure to prove she was worthy of her position. Now, having finally worn the crown, she was being told she could only enter those palaces by permission. She could appear at ceremonies. She could stand beside the king. She could represent the monarchy. But when the doors closed, she remained merely a guest. Camilla turned to William. "Do you think this is just a punishment for me? Every time you refuse an exception, your father is forced to watch his wife treated like an outsider in his own reign." William did not look away. He acknowledged that Charles would suffer. He also admitted that this decision might chill the relationship between father and son. But present pain, William argued, could not be allowed to dismantle safeguards for the future. If he yielded simply because the pressure became personal, every future principle could be viewed as negotiable. Every family crisis would create a new exception. Every private plea would further weaken the line of succession. And ultimately, Catherine and the children might once again find themselves dependent on the decisions of others to belong to the very institution they were duty-bound to serve. Camilla shook her head. She said Philip had never understood the modern monarchy. He had allowed the fears of the past to shape the family's future. Anne pulled her chair closer to the table. She did not raise her voice. "My father understood enough to accurately predict this meeting." Anne said Philip had known Camilla would ask Charles to intervene. He knew Charles would feel an obligation to protect his wife. He knew William would be placed in a position that made it appear as though he were opposing his own father. And he also knew the family would label this decree an act of punishment. Anne placed her hand on the dossier. Not a single word in there was added after his death. Just then the door opened. Charles walked in. Camilla looked at him as if a single step in her direction could change everything. But Charles did not move toward his wife. He looked at the decree, then asked Anne if Philip had left a private message explaining why these restrictions had to be so absolute. Anne remained silent for a few seconds. Then she took a sealed envelope from the black box and handed it to him. Charles carried the letter to a corner of the room and read it alone. The king's expression shifted. For in the final lines, Philip had written the very thing Charles feared most. His love for Camilla could become a threat to the future of the succession. Charles read the final line of the letter once more. Philip had not written that his son lacked love for the monarchy. He had written something far more painful, that Charles had spent most of his life defending his love for Camilla, and that very devotion might cloud his objectivity when his wife's interests clashed with the future of the succession. The king folded the letter, though his hand was not entirely steady. In that moment, it was not merely the decree that wounded Charles. It was the feeling that his father had never truly believed he could balance love and duty. Anne saw the shift in her brother's expression. She said the decree was not drafted to destroy his marriage. It was created to prevent the current reign from inadvertently undermining the next. William remained standing on the other side of the table. He did not back down. To William, his signature was no longer a mere administrative formality. It had become a shield protecting Catherine and the children from having their right of residence used as a bargaining chip during a family crisis. Charles understood that he faced only two choices. He could challenge the decree and publicly side with Camilla, but doing so would drag the dispute before the estate's governing council. Family disagreements could be laid bare. The public might perceive the king as placing his marriage above the stability of the succession. And most importantly, William's position would be weakened just as he was preparing to shoulder greater responsibilities. The alternative was not to object. That would safeguard the institution and preserve the rights of William and Catherine, yet it would also mean leaving the woman he had defended for so many years feeling cast aside. Camilla did not press him. She simply watched. Finally, Charles set the letter down. He said he would not challenge the decree. No one in the room reacted immediately. There was no argument, no declaration of victory, just a silence long enough for Camilla to understand that it was all over. The consequences were enacted that very afternoon. A royal staff member brought a set of keys into the room and placed them on the polished tabletop. Then came the files regarding Camilla's Windsor apartment. Floor plans, staffing lists, renovation plans, moving schedules. Tenure agreements. Each document was quietly reclaimed. Camilla's personal staff were informed that they would not automatically transfer to permanent roles within the main residences. Before sunset, another notice arrived. The suite at Balmoral that Camilla had intended to use for future visits was to be reassigned to William, Catherine, and their children. Up to that point, Camilla had maintained her composure. Only when the last staff member left the room and the door closed did she grip the back of the chair. The tears that came were not because she had lost a room, but because after all those years by Charles's side, she still felt she had never truly been accepted as belonging in those places. Charles entered shortly after. Camilla did not turn around immediately. She asked in a very soft voice, "Did you choose peace for the monarchy, or did you simply lack the courage to stand up for me?" Charles said that a challenge would tear the family apart. Camilla looked at him. "The family has already taken my place." Nothing more was said. Before Camilla left Windsor, a brief note was delivered to her. It was a request for a private meeting. The sender was not Anne, not William. It was Catherine. Catherine wished to see her privately. There was no explanation, no signature from William, no seal of confirmation from Anne, just an invitation. The meeting took place late in the afternoon in a small room overlooking the gardens at the back of Windsor. No Charles, no William, no Anne, no lawyers, secretaries, or advisors of any kind. When Catherine entered, she closed the door herself. Only the two women remained in the room, both having spent years living under the weight of the same institution, yet having followed vastly different paths. Camilla spoke first. Her voice was far calmer than during their previous confrontation, yet the hurt was still evident in every word. "You are protected by the very constraints placed upon me." Camilla looked directly at Catherine. "The more secure your future becomes, the more my own space is curtailed." Catherine did not interrupt. She let Camilla pour out everything she had bottled up for years. Only when silence returned to the room did Catherine speak softly. "I knew Philip had prepared a mechanism to protect my family." She paused for a moment. "But I didn't know it would go quite that far." Catherine admitted she had never seen the full decree. She hadn't known it would prevent Camilla from having a permanent apartment, or that the power to appoint staff would be restricted, or that those terms would apply to all the principal residences, and certainly not that Anne and William would become the guardians of that system. Camilla shook her head slightly. "If you knew such a mechanism existed, why didn't you say anything?" Catherine lowered her gaze. She recalled a dinner at Windsor many years ago. It was the first time she had heard the apartment designated for her family referred to as territory. At that very moment, a worry she had never known before took root. If one day the home where William and their children lived could be changed simply at another person's whim, did they truly belong in the place they were expected to serve? A few days after that dinner, Philip met privately with Catherine. He did not speak of Camilla, nor did he criticize Charles. He simply said one thing that Catherine never forgot. "William, you and the children will never have to feel like mere guests in the place you are expected to shoulder the burden of leadership." Catherine looked at Camilla. "He didn't say that to spite you. He said it because he feared that instability would repeat itself with the next generation." Then Catherine continued, "I do not wish to take your rooms away, nor do I want this decree to become a weapon used to diminish a queen's dignity." For the first time since the meeting began, Camilla did not reply immediately. Catherine slowly put forward her proposal. She suggested that Charles could easily build a permanent residence for the two of them on a privately owned estate. It would not be part of the royal estate system. It would require no approval from Anne, no signature from William. It would not be subject to any succession schedule. Camilla would be free to choose her own staff, to organize her own life, to regard it as a true home for herself and Charles. "I cannot give Windsor to you," Catherine spoke very softly, "but I can help you secure a place where no one has the right to call you a guest." Camilla closed her eyes. She did not say that Philip's decree was right, nor did she say she had forgiven. But for the first time, she no longer demanded that Catherine give up the protections afforded to her family. The two women looked at each other for a long time. There was no winner, nor was there an outright loser. There was only a silent consensus that this crisis would not be allowed to escalate into an open war between the two dynasties. But just as that silence settled in, the telephone outside the room began to ring. The first reports had surfaced in the media. A secret kept under wraps for years had just breached the palace gates. And now the entire nation was beginning to debate it. As news spread beyond the palace gates, Britain immediately divided into two camps. One side viewed Prince Philip's decree as a cold-hearted move designed to continue punishing Camilla even after his death. The other believed he was simply doing what the monarchy has always demanded, safeguarding the future against decisions driven by the emotions of the present. The palace subsequently confirmed that Camilla would retain the title of Queen Consort, along with her ceremonial royal public duties, and her place beside King Charles III. Yet behind closed doors, her authority had changed forever. Camilla would hold no independent administrative power over Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, Balmoral, or Sandringham. She could enter these places as Queen Consort, but she could not make them her own personal domain. Before the official statement was released, Camilla personally removed a sentence that might have been interpreted as a public challenge to the decree. In its place, she added a pledge to honor the arrangements established to protect future generations. It was not a total surrender. It was a choice not to let personal pain escalate into a conflict that could wound the entire family. Shortly thereafter, Camilla and Catherine appeared together at a royal engagement. No one mentioned the decree. No one explained the matter of the reclaimed rooms. Yet the sight of the two women standing side by side conveyed a message clearer than any statement. They had chosen dignity over retribution. Charles subsequently arranged a permanent residence for himself and Camilla at a privately owned estate. There, Camilla required no signature from William. She needed no approval from Anne. No succession schedule dictated how long she could stay. It was not Windsor, yet it was a home where no one could call her a guest. In a private conversation, Camilla told Charles that the decree made her feel as though her years of loyalty had been erased by a mere few pages of paper. Charles replied that no palace, no matter how grand, could determine the worth of their marriage. But there remained one final unfinished matter. Camilla held on to the last Windsor key until she herself decided to return it. She did not wait for staff to come and reclaim it. She did not wait for an official notice. She walked up to Princess Anne herself and placed the key in her hand. Anne accepted it without a hint of triumph. There was no apology. There was no complete forgiveness. There was only a silent acknowledgement that both women were living with the decision of someone who was no longer there. Prince William then offered a final assurance. He stated that the decree would never be used to diminish Camilla's dignity, undermine her ceremonial role, or cast her as an outsider within her own family. In return, Camilla pledged not to challenge the protected residency rights of Catherine and the children. William accepted that promise, and so the crisis ended without an absolute victor. Camilla kept the crown, but she returned the key. Charles kept the woman he loved, but could not open every door to her. William and Catherine were protected, yet had to live with the reality that their future was built upon another person's pain. Anne fulfilled the promise made to her father, yet found no joy in carrying it out. Perhaps the greatest value of this story lies not in who was right or who was wrong. It comes down to a more difficult question. Should power serve the desires of those who hold it, or should it be constrained to protect those who will come next? Prince Philip chose succession. Charles chose the institution. Catherine chose reconciliation. And Camilla, in the moment she handed back that final key, chose dignity. She did not lose a crown. Yet everyone understands that within the royal family, standing beside the throne does not equate to possessing the rooms behind it. What do you think? Was Prince Philip right to set boundaries to protect William, Catherine, and the next generation? Or was that decree too cruel to Camilla after all the years she stood by Charles's side? If you had to choose between family love and the stability of the monarchy. Whose side would you take, Charles, Camilla, William, or Philip? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to join us for future stories about the royal family.